2017 Victory Octane. Victory uses its success in the power cruiser sector as a springboard into the burgeoning, performance-oriented American-made bike market. The Victory Octane leads the charge against opponents such as the V-Rod from Harley-Davidson, and perhaps the Indian Scout, and is meant for buyers looking for a domestic muscle bike that doesn't fit in the Harley Breakout or Star Raider mold. Buyers who are looking for something a little more progressive and a little less constrained by classic design considerations. This is an important step for Victory since HD is still king of the cruisers with Indian close behind, and there isn't a lot of room in the market for more cruisers, especially since the aforementioned companies are packing more punch into their power plants nowadays. I believe Victory has found a niche, and is attempting to fill it. Let's take a look at the filling, shall we? Continue reading for my first look at the Victory Octane. Right off the bat you will notice the Octane looks an awful lot like the Indian Scout. Sure, the engine dressing is a bit different in more ways than just the blackout treatment would explain. The jugs and rocker boxes are a little different as well. While the upper lines are also similar, Victory used a sporty-looking fuel tank with recesses reminiscent of the old Triumph knee dents, but with an angular quality that is unique to the brand. The Octane retains but a little of the Nessie swoop-a-doop prevalent among Victory products, and what remains lends the upper lines a certain grace. A proper, saddle-shaped solo seat cups the rider's butt with a lip that, hopefully, will keep you on it when you grab a fistful and twist it. Plus, the lack of pillion accommodations keep the rear fender nice and clean, and on a whole, the bike displays a stripped-down, almost naked look that is choose any features or components that doesn't directly contribute to performance, classic bobber philosophy, if not a particularly bobber-looking execution. The low stance and cruiser-like rider triangle places the pilot in the windsock position. I gotta say the windsock isn't the best position for quick and fast riding styles, but you get used to it after a while, probably. Personally, I am still toying with the idea of going back to mid-mount controls instead of the forward controls I run now, just because once you get up to around 80 miles per hour or so, it gets difficult to keep your feet on the pegs. It's a small thing, but it is a thing, and if you are unaccustomed to forward controls be sure to remember that it will get easier with practice, but will never be as comfortable at speed as mid-mounts or a jockey-style rider triangle. Victory took an unusual step with the bones of the Octane. Instead of welded steel or even welded aluminum members, the factory used a cast aluminum skeleton to set the stage. Interesting, but I wonder how well such a system will tolerate crash repairs. That aside, the layout allows for a 32-degree lean angle in both directions, which opens up the possibility of hitting the corners with some authority. I would expect to see some upside-down forks on a ride build as a performance machine. Not only does it look boss, but it also significantly stiffens the front end to better handle the forces associated with aggressive riding. No such luck here, though the 41mm, dual-rate forks are about as torque-resistant as you can get without going inverted. Victory kept the rear suspension simple with a pair of dual-rate, coil-over shocks with adjustable preload. Wheel travel is typical at 4.7 inches in the rear and 3 inches up front, sufficient for around town riding, but you had better not jump the tracks with it. The factory kept the brakes simple and honest, leaving ABS and linked brakes on the shelf. I'm okay with that since the raw feedback should allow for advanced braking techniques that will help you keep the machine under control when you start pushing it. A single 289mm disc and twin pot caliper slows the front wheel, and a single piston caliper binds the rear. Cast, 10-spoke, blackout wheels mount the 18-inch front hoop, and 17-inch rear. Now for the piece de resistance, the 60-degree, liquid-cooled V-twin that dominates and defines the Octane design. The engine runs a decidedly over-square configuration with a 101mm bore and 73.6mm stroke for 1,179 cc in total displacement. Obviously, the mill borrows heavily from the Indian Scout lump, but with a few more cubes and a slightly different look. A single, 60mm throttle body manages the induction, and a dock setup actuates 4 valves per head to open up the combustion chamber and allow the engine to breathe. The mill cranks out 104 ponies at 8,000 revolutions per minute, and 76 pounds of grunt at 6 grand. That's in its stock setup, but it can easily be modified with the equivalent of a Stage 1 kit to really open the engine up, similar to the Harley tax many of us are familiar with. The Octane gets a purpose-built, 6-speed transmission that eliminates much of the old shift clunk noise for a quiet transmission that fits with the progressive bent of the rest of the bike. A conventional, wet clutch couples the tranny to the mill, and a reinforced belt drive makes the rear wheel go round-a-round. I would bemoan the lack of hydraulic assistance on the clutch at this point. A bike that is marketed for the performance crowd should be built to handle an aggressive riding style, and without ABS the rider has naught but his own skill to bleed off speed ahead of a turn, a potentially risky proposition, especially for new riders. The Octane gets from 0 to 60 in under 4 seconds and runs the quarter mile in 12, so there is no lack of opportunity to get yourself in trouble, to be sure. Priced to put some performance within reach of the unwashed masses, the Octane rolls off the floor for $10,499 in a monochrome, matte super steel gray and blackout finish. Since the Victory is a purebred, domestic muscle bike, I decided to put it up against a model family that represented a radical departure from the norm for its parent company when it launched back in 2001. I'm talking about the VRSC V-Rod descendant, the 2016 Harley Nitrod Special. Harley built the mold for the genre with the original V-Rod, and the apple didn't fall far from the tree as the Nitrod Special carries the same, muscular look with a raked front end and low-slung stance. While the Octane doesn't look quite as beefy, it still carries a gritty edge that gives away its stoplight burning purpose in life. Both fit within the American muscle bike class, even if each manufacturer has its own interpretation of exactly what that looks like. To me, each has its own qualities. The Octane presents a no-frills/serious business face to the world that I find refreshing, if a little single-minded. The V-Rod carries itself with a little more grace, and some mildly feminine curves, for a femme fatale look. Both rides carry a menacing, custom blackout paint scheme. Engine size is likewise comparable, with a slight edge going to the HD model at 1,247 cc versus the Victory at 1,179 cubes. Torque output is neck and neck as well, with Harley on top at 83.4 pound-feet, a skosh more than the 76 pounds out of the Octane. Before you get too excited about the power difference, I would point out that the Octane weighs in at 528 pounds, dry, where the Nitrod tips the scales at 637 pounds, a weight difference that will soak up some of that extra torque. Bottom line here, the engines are pretty much a wash as far as deciding factors go. Victory slices and dices at the checkout with a $10,995 MSRP, a bargain basement deal against the Harley Nitrod's $16,849 starting price. Name recognition is worth something, but to be perfectly frank, I don't think it's worth $6 grand here.